Hi, it's Dwyer, DwyerVIP.com, GamblersAdvisory.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Week 16 has just ended, and I believe it's always important to put your thoughts down on paper before the media spin and interviews take over, right? Whatever you saw with your own two eyes, you need to put it down, because in the next few days you're going to hear experts, commentators here online put their spin on what you saw, and it might make you forget what actually happened. Before we forget, let me just give you a few quick thoughts on a few key teams heading into week 17 of the NFL. First, the Atlanta Falcons. They've wrapped up the top seed in the NFC. But how good are they really? Their last 4 games, they have been outgained by their opponent in 3 of the 4 games. Carolina, a few weeks back, had 160 more rushing yards than Atlanta, who has problems running the ball. Well, yesterday, the Detroit Lions, who are on the outside looking in, they're not going to be in the playoffs. The Lions had 172 more passing yards than the Atlanta Falcons. To me, these numbers raise doubts as to how good the Falcons are. Are they a dominant team? In my opinion, the numbers don't say that. Let's talk about another team. The Cincinnati Bengals. You know what? The Bengals may have their problems. Offensively, they're a bit predictable. That's all true, right? They're going to have to be on the road for a portion of the playoffs. But what I want you to consider is this. Is Cincinnati being on the road a bad thing? Would you believe that Cincinnati this season is 6-2 on the road? They're actually a better road team than they are a home team, right? Let me also point out too that yesterday, it's true, in Pittsburgh, the Steelers actually outgained the Cincinnati Bengals by 13 yards, right? But did you know the last time an opponent outgained Cincinnati before then was November 11th, when they played the enigmatic New York Giants? In other words, Cincinnati is kind of like the opposite of the Atlanta Falcons. Cincinnati has been routinely outgaining opponents. Is it possible that this team, which just beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh, is better than advertised? Right? Just consider the possibility. Let's talk about a team that might be less than advertised. You know, it's one thing when Aaron Rodgers blows up your secondary, right? It's one thing when Tom Brady blows up your secondary. But how do you get outpassed by Christian Ponder, right? When that happens, you have problems. Well, that's what happened to the Houston Texans yesterday. Let me just point out, too, you have health concerns with one of the league's best players, Arian Foster, right? I know Ben Tate's a good player, but if the Texans lose Arian Foster, they're going to lose a big part of their offense. You need to take seriously and look at the Arian Foster health concerns. All I could say with the Texans is enjoy it while it lasts. Because, quite frankly, this team statistically doesn't look that dominant. If you are in a fantasy pool and you or a friend has Matt Schaub as your starting fantasy quarterback, you've known what I'm talking about for weeks. Let's switch gears and talk about another team. Yesterday the headline was that Andrew Luck set the passing record for rookies. That's great. But aren't you a little concerned by the fact that Andrew Luck, in a league where, RG3 has a quarterback rating over 100, where Russell Wilson at home has a quarterback rating over 100, where Nick Foles yesterday, a rookie you need to keep an eye on for the Philadelphia Eagles, had a quarterback rating in the 80s. Right? To go with more than 340 passing yards. Aren't you a little concerned that Andrew Luck on the season has a quarterback rating of less than 80? Right? It's 75.6, folks. Aren't you concerned that Andrew Luck is completing less than 55% of his passes? Now, let me just say this. Andrew Luck is a franchise quarterback. But is he enough of a franchise quarterback to carry a team that has been outgained in their last 3 games? Let me just put it to you this way. I know they won yesterday, but consider the fact that they got outgained yesterday by Kansas City, a bad team, by more than 200 yards. Luck is, at the end of the day, a rookie quarterback, and in my opinion, the team around him isn't good enough for them to be a force in the playoffs. Right? So you're going to be hearing a lot of feel-good stories. Atlanta, Houston, Indy. What I want you to do is to look a little deeper at the Seattles of the league and the Cincinnatis. Let me just say this about Seattle. It's true they're much better at home than they are on the road. And it's true that they're going to have to be on the road in the playoffs, assuming that the Niners take care of business next week against the Arizona Cardinals, right? That division is still in flux. But just consider that they took on a Niner offense that, quite frankly, is high-powered. And defensively, Seattle held the course. Also, what other team this year has put up more than 40 points as much as the Seattle Seahawks, right? This is one of those weird years where I believe you have to view the top seeds with suspicion, and you have to look a little bit deeper to teams like Seattle, Cincinnati, Green Bay, a team that's not a top seed, but yet is very dangerous, right? The New England Patriots, keep in mind, the Patriots aren't going to be the top seed if Houston wins next week, and if Denver wins, they're not going to be the 2nd seed, right? But these are the teams that, quite frankly, have the talent, have the record, have been outgaining teams, right? Have been getting more yards per play than their opponents. Finally, let me close in saying, as I looked at the numbers, I came across a team that, quite frankly, imploded, and their fans have to be scratching their heads. Detroit pickup. Let me ask you right now, what happened with your team? Because it might surprise people how good Detroit's numbers were statistically this year But yet this is a team with 11 losses. Let me just say this. Forget the score. When you're analyzing games, a score is just one metric. Let's look at the total yards gained in a game. Would it surprise you to know that out of Detroit's last 10 games, and keep in mind, this is a team that on the season has only won 4 times. Did you know that out of Detroit's last 10 games, they've only been outgained twice, and both times by 35 yards or less? Yesterday, they actually outgained the number 1 seed, Atlanta Falcons, by 178 yards. All I can say is it's obvious to me that Detroit shot itself in the foot, has far more talent than 4 wins, right? Far more talent. They have a record-setting wide receiver. They have a quarterback who last year passed for more than 5,000 yards. How did they let all of this slip away? You know, we can talk about their rushing attack, etc. The bottom line is, on the field, they routinely outgained their opponents. I don't even see that from teams like the Atlanta Falcons. Right? Detroit, quite frankly, in my opinion, is the disappointment of the year. Let me hear from you. I know Jet fans might disagree with that last statement. Let me hear from you. Let's have the discussion. Educate all of us on who you think the sleeper teams are in the playoffs. Let's have the dialogue. Let's try to figure things out before Week 17 takes place and before we start getting misinformation, political spin, stuff that, quite frankly, is designed to confuse the public, make uncompetitive games look competitive, and hide the real players. Thanks for watching.